I'm not even sorry. The sun shone through the windows, sunrays hitting the blonde's eyes, a groan escaping past the blonde lips in response. Reluctantly, his eyes opened up, not hesitating to turn his head. It took a moment or so for him to feel something wrapped around him, his eyes hurriedly snapping towards the planticles that were now wrapped around his body. They were tight, but not harmfully tight around his body. Memories flooded his mind, now discovering the reason as why his ass was so sore. His eyes went wide and a scream was about to erupt through the house until he suddenly felt something slap over his mouth, muffling anything that may have come out. It was warm, felt soft, definitely skin, a hand. Then a gruff and deep voice followed, his lips right by Prompto's ears.
Don't scream,
he mumbled tiredly.
Questions can be answered later.
His voice gradually became more seductive and smooth, obvious want within his voice. Prompto's eyes were wide as his body was lightly trembling as he tried to process the current situation. One of the many planticles travelled from Prompto's nose, lightly covering it, slowly forcing Prompto to taking in a whiff of the scent. Of course, the flower was an aphrodisiac. It didn't take long for Prompto's train of thought to become as clouded as the planticles began to explore his body, filling up every nook and cranny. Audible pants echoed throughout the room, as the man behind him removed his hands from his mouth, using his hands to explore all that was in reach.
You have soft skin,
came the husky voice once again, Prompto writhing within the touch, his member quick to harden as the planticles poked him in every area, caressing each inch of his body. Fingers pinched at Prompto's nipples, a smirk growing on Noctis's face when he heard the mule he received.
You like that?
He breathed into Prompto's ears, and the boy's lightly trembling against his own. The planticles moved to Prompto's hardening cock, one wrapping around the length and giving it a pleasurable squeeze, his body jolting with a loud moan.
I wonder if you're still loose,
Noctis mumbled as he took his hand away from Prompto's nipples and pressed a finger to his entrance, still loose. Though he was dry now, and he didn't want to risk hurting him in any way, he would do it in a moment. In swift movement, Noctis flipped Prompto onto his back with a seductive grin, getting on top of him. There was an amused tinkle in his eyes as he watched Prompto stare back at the planticles that came from his body, planticles that were ready to violate the boy beneath him. What are those? Prompto asked with wide eyes.
I said questions are for later,
Noctis answered strictly, leaning down to pepper kisses over his body, and he was writhing beneath him merely from those kisses. The kisses kept going down until Noctis reached his lower half, his hand taking a hold of Prompto's thick thighs and opening his legs up for himself. His tongue darted out to lick the lips. He caught sight of Prompto's puckered, twitching hole. It didn't take long for Noctis to bring his lips to the hole, beginning to lap at it whilst one of the many planticles began jacking off Prompto's length, others feeling up the blonde's body. He pushed his tongue into his ass, listening to the loud moans that now filled his room, trembling fires either side of his head. As he pushed his tongue in, he began moving around, trying to pleasure Prompto to the best of his ability. Fuck! Keep going! Prompto demanded greedily. Clear beads of pre-cum forming at the tip of his own cock. Every area of him was being pleasured, and he loved it so much. Noctis's tongue soon met with Prompto's sweet spot, and of course, he didn't hesitate to work at the area. What was once moans were now cries of bliss at his tongue pressed against his sweet spot, licking at it and performing every possible movement he could. Planticles caressed Prompto's body all over, his well-rounded ass, perfect thighs, his wide hips, all so perfect. I come! There was no time for Prompto to finish his sentence as a scream filled the room, accompanied by Prompto's cock shooting out a certain sticky substance right onto his stomach. And that was then when Noctis pulled away from his ass, licking his lips, and watched his Prompto's fucked out face, his planticles not letting up with the feeling of his body. He leant down towards Prompto's face, whispering right into his ear.
Time for the main event!
And with that, his hand reached down to position his throbbing cock at Prompto's red and twitching entrance. And without hesitance, Noctis pushed his cock into Prompto's needy entrance, groaning at the way his entrance practically swallowed in his cock. Prompto's entrance, tight around his thick and solid girth, he had been desiring.
Oh, you're fucking tight.
Noctis growled out quietly, not giving Prompto much time to recover from his last orgasm, and slammed the rest of his cock right into Prompto's ass, listening to the cry of pleasure that filled the room. Placing hands on the bed to keep himself up, Noctis instantly went right at it, his hips moving back and forth quickly as he pounded his cock into Prompto's ass, with not a single bit of mercy. Listening to every cry of pure ecstasy, the boy beneath him tearing up from a tad from the overstimulation. An idea popped into Noctis' mind as he paused in his movements, using all of his willpower to do so. One of the planticles moved down to Prompto's entrance, prodding at it, despite Noctis' cock already being there.
I bet that you can take more,
he teased, reaching down a finger to Prompto's entrance and trying to spread his entrance wider with his finger, managing to get a small opening. And with that, he didn't hesitate to slowly push the planticle alongside his cock, watching as Prompto's face contorted in pain and discomfort. It hurts, came the whimper, and Noctis shushed him.
I'll take it slow.
Noctis reassured, and reached up a hand to thread his fingers through the blonde locks, very slowly and cautiously, beginning to move his cock in and out with the planticle, giving Prompto a minute or two to adjust to the overwhelming feeling. There was an increase in speed when Noctis noticed that Prompto was beginning to feel pleasure. The increase in speed carried on until both his cock and the planticle were now pounding his ass. Noctis! I can't! He cried out, overwhelmed by the intense stimulation. It felt so good. Too much! Drool leaked from the corner of Prompto's mouth. Eyes glazed over with pleasure.
Fuck, I'm going to come!
Noctis groaned, voice straining as he didn't let up. He ignored Prompto's pleas to slow down, knowing full well that he enjoyed it this way. I'm going to come again! Just after the cry of those words, a mixture of moans and groans filled the room as both males came at the same time. Prompto once again coming in the same place while Noctis released his seed into Prompto's ass, painting his insides white with his cum. He slowly pulled out as both tried to come down from their highs, the planticle pulling out of Prompto as the rest of his body contracted. He collapsed next to Prompto on the bed, lying down with him and holding him close.
I think now would be a good time for a nap.
Noctis spoke with a sultry voice, spooning the other male with closed eyes.
The end.